Jonathan Rogers, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast.
I feel very welcomed. Thank you, Terrence.
There are some times where you hit record and you know there's going to be a synergy. For anyone watching on YouTube, Jonathan and I are both standing here in beautiful Indiana Jones-esque cosplay, which there was a sad moment where I realized in my purchases of wardrobe items that I was basically building my cosplay with unintentionally for a long time. And then also I went, I have the complete Indiana Jones. I went to Banana Republic the other day and they had like the classic Italian style pants, which are very Indiana Jones. I'm like, oh, I'll just pick those up. And I was like, that was not intended, but it worked out beautifully.
I know that too well because growing up, I was always kind of low-key cosplaying indie out and about, and I was always sort of deep down hoping someone would notice and
Hmm.
I'd be able to make an immediate new friend. So I know how that feels.
Okay. I want to ask about your hat, but first I have to share this story. One time my buddy and I were at a college campus taking a CLEP test. I was like 16 at the time. I thought I was really cool because I had like one of those dusters,
Oh yeah.
like a nice Australian duster, and I had my fedora on. We're walking down the street. He looks at me, he's like, "You look like such a nerd." I'm like, "I don't care," because I'm a 16-year-old who is very like in with my style. And as we are
Right.
walking, a car drives past and someone sticks his head out and goes, "It's Dr. Jones!" And I look at him, I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
worth it.
beautiful. Beautiful. Well, and look who's laughing now. The nerds rule the world. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay, Jonathan, I have to ask, you have a beautiful fedora. Where did you get it?
So this is actually fairly new. I've only had it for a couple of months, and I got this from a fairly new seller named Claudio Pellerito,
Oh,
who is
yes.
based in Spain, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got this one when I was trying to figure out a new hat that would act as sort of a all purposes, like throughout the canon of indie.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, I wanted one that has the softer pinch on the front that you
Yep.
see more often in the films.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Raiders, he has the very sharp front pinch, and that's the only hat out of all of them that has that style. And I
Mm-hmm.
liked the idea that if I'm going to be having a cosplay that I'm going to be wearing throughout my life, it'd be nice to have at least one of those hats that can sort of act as this is from 1936 onward, where you only see that style. So I chose to get a new hat from him, and I chose the Crystal Skull model because
Mm-hmm.
I really love the shape and silhouette of that particular hat. So that's what this is. This is a crystal skull from Claudio.
Mm-hmm. Claudio, I follow him on Instagram. Oh,
Mm,
chef's kiss.
gorgeous
Like
stuff.
looking at his videos, it's like ASMR
Oh
hat
yeah,
making.
it's beautiful stuff. Yeah, no, he was incredibly generous and helped me a lot with figuring out my measurements and everything. So he tailors them all to your exact head size. So if you get a hat from him, you're going to be getting top-notch quality and great customer service, and he'll make sure that it fits you flawlessly. So
We skipped right to the hat. I didn't ask. Can you share a brief biographical sketch with the audience? Who
of
is
course, of
Jonathan
course.
Rogers?
So I am a independent filmmaker and writer and cosplayer based in Minnesota in the United States.
Yay,
And
Midwest.
yes, yes, exactly. There's not a whole lot of us a lot of us indie fans over in this section, but sometimes. But yeah, I have been living in Minnesota my entire life, born and raised, and I have a passionate love for pulp adventure stories,
Hmm.
science fiction, fantasy. Um, I grew up watching movies all the time as sort of my escape from a bit of a messy childhood,
Hmm.
and filmmaking and movies, just the art of it was extremely inspiring for me, and especially Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Those are like my two main religions, really.
Hmm.
And of course, they both came from George Lucas. So it's like I worship at the Church of Lucas. So yeah, I that's sort of my really quick biography.
The thing that I always find just so shocking is the future, like from the 80s onward, adventure in two categories has been defined by one man. It's just shocking
Yeah,
because We did for leading up to Dial of Destiny, we watched like a whole bunch of the films that contributed to eventually what Indiana Jones became.
Right, right.
And there are other people who have done podcasts on that for Star Wars because there's so many different concepts that have been peppered throughout film history that
Yep.
led to those creations. It literally became, oh, this is like the apex of the genre. And
Yes.
I just want to bounce off you because the thing that I've always found fascinating is seeing how Star Wars has was like the apex iteration of the space opera that
Yep.
then now there still are other filmmakers and storytellers that found ways of making good sci-fi genre of their own that
Hmm.
isn't necessarily 100% derivative of Star Wars but still carries on that tradition. I feel like
Yeah.
adventure has had a really tough time moving past Indiana Jones and not because Indiana Jones is so apex what
Mm.
adventure is, but
Mm.
think of most adventure stories like The Mummy,
Mm.
National Treasure. Outside of that, there really haven't been many properties, books, or films that have managed to define their own adventure genre. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Any observations?
Oh, I think about this all the time. Yeah, because the adventure genre is something that I feel like has become a bit of a niche fandom nowadays. And it's something that is very difficult to uh, Spielberg and Lucas, I think they were just lightning in a bottle and they
Hmm.
knew exactly how to combine their talents in a way that elevated those old serials and
Hmm.
everything to like the highest form that it could possibly be. And it's really kind of a testament to just how skilled those men are that everyone else that has come after has struggled to live up to that example. And like you said, Star Wars was able to like break the dam open for a new wave of science fiction and space opera and stuff. And some people have been very successful at that. Adventure, though, it's been really difficult to break out of indie shadow. And the only ones I can think of that have really managed to successfully do it is The Mummy.
Hmm.
And I guess to a lesser extent, National Treasure. And in the video game world, Uncharted,
Oh, yeah.
unquestionably.
Uncharted,
I mean,
unquestionably.
yeah, and Tomb Raider, I guess. I shouldn't
Hmm.
forget that. So there have been some success stories, but whenever there's one that is like cinematic and is trying to reach for the same kind of like tone and tenor as the indie films, it's so difficult to hit that alchemy because I think it was really so much of it was Spielberg and Lucas.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's something that as someone who wants to write in this genre and create stories like this, I'm constantly studying where did these people fall short? Where did these
Hmm.
people succeed? How can I avoid those pitfalls? But I also try to show a little bit of grace for the fact that Spielberg and Lucas are one of a kind generational talents. Like
Well,
it's
and at
very hard to
that,
live up to that.
they couldn't live up to it again. Like that's
Yeah,
the hard
yeah.
part is like if you think about it, these are the same creatives, which Crystal Skull has redeemable moments,
Mm,
but the lows are very low,
yeah.
which and same thing with Dial of Destiny, where
Mm,
it is we especially with Crystal Skull, we have the same ingredients,
yeah,
and I can see where they were trying to do something different. And I applaud them for trying to push the envelope a little bit. But again,
yeah,
you just see the how hard it is to live up to those first three films are so
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I will say off the top that I appreciate and love all five films
Hmm.
for their qualities. I for me, Indiana Jones is primarily Harrison Ford,
Hmm.
and I'll get into a whole bit about my personal connection with that, but I love all five films. I try to look for the good in all of them. So
Hmm.
even the one that everybody hates.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Which arguably, I know that it's just probably more at this point internet approved to hate on Crystal Skull than Dial of
Right,
Destiny. But
right.
I like some of Dial of Destiny because I think that James Mangold's an amazing director.
Yes,
Um,
indeed. Yep.
and it does have some redeemable moments. It feels more to me like they just didn't quite go far enough sometimes with some things.
Sure. Sure.
That's where it feels like mediocre is worse than bad.
Sure. And I actually did watch your Dial Destiny review shortly before having this interview. And so I would love to at some point be able to have an entire episode just talking about that movie because I have so many takes I like that movie a lot more than most people, and I would
Hmm.
love for the chance to be able to kind of bang my drum about how some of the decisions that movie made have been wildly misunderstood, but
Hmm.
that's for a completely different episode.
Yes, it's for a different episode. And again,
Sure.
like honestly, James Mangold did his best, is
Oh,
my
yeah.
100% take. You cannot
Yeah.
fault him as a director.
Yeah. And
Um,
that movie was dealing with so many icky
Production
things at the
issues.
time. Yeah.
But like we
So it
said,
could have been so much worse.
that's the thing. Like people don't appreciate how bad movies can be. For you as a
Hmm.
filmmaker, when you see movies, how much is like your heart bleeding for I know I've heard the background stuff on X, Y, or Z. I know this poor
Mm.
director was like under the gun. I sure you have a greater instinct for what it took to make the movie.
Yes, 100%. Becoming a filmmaker, if you're not a total jerk, it teaches you empathy for people in the craft, and it allows you to kind of understand that everyone is ultimately trying their best to make something meaningful out of chaos.
Hmm.
And I try really hard to not fall down the rabbit hole of assuming that any movie I didn't like was made by hacks that
Yes.
didn't at least try. And so this is something where I try to look for the good in art because I know that everyone that makes these things, they're desperately hoping that at least one person will watch this stuff and maybe be moved or inspired or something. And some of my favorite stories ever are when you have these films from back in the day that were completely lambasted by critics and
Hmm.
audiences rejected it, and it just ended up being treated as like one big giant embarrassment.
Citizen
Years
Kane.
later, these kids that grew up watching the movie, they then visit the filmmakers and actors at like conventions, and they get to tell them, "Hey, I watched this movie as a kid nonstop. It gave me something to laugh and cry about. It gave me comfort during rough times. This is a movie that meant a lot to me. Thank you for making it." And it's stuff like that where it's like even the worst movie ever made probably means something to someone.
Hmm.
And I try to kind of carry that with me whenever I'm watching a movie, even if I really don't care for the decisions it makes. I try to think for a bit, what were they attempting to do? And was it made with sincerity? And 9 times out of 10, I think it is.
Hmm.
So that's my philosophy when it comes to critiquing films. So,
Hmm. So talking movies here, Cleopatra Pryce. I I want to give you one immediate praise that I love the comparison with Indiana Jones here. One of the things that
mm,
works really well with Indiana Jones as a character, and I think is honestly something that in storytelling tends to go one way or the other. Either people follow
mm,
this principle well or they do it terribly. You make your character an underdog who is doing their
mm,
best,
mm.
and if they get shown up at the beginning, Indiana Jones losing, we see he's competent, he loses the
Yep.
artifact to Belloc. It doesn't matter how
Yep.
good you are, you can still lose.
Yep.
I love that Cleopatra, right at the start of, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, Amun-Ra,
Yep. Mirror of
the
Amun-Ra.
Mirror of Amun-Ra. She's doing her best. She is shown up, and the bad guy calls her a clown. And
Yep.
positioning her in that way makes her such a likable and sympathetic character, and more immediately there's a relationship with the audience because we know that experience.
Indeed, yes. When writing this, I saw it as my opportunity to make my ultimate love letter to Indiana Jones and the
Hmm.
Mummy and like the entire genre, really, but
Hmm.
primarily Indy and the Mummy for being kind of my introduction to this genre. And those two movies were able to capture this beautiful sense of wonder and like almost sort of, I'm trying to think of the right word here, like a not mysticism, but a romanticism. That's the word I'm
Yes.
looking for, where it has that sense of like, this is a bygone age where things were somewhat simpler. The lines of good and bad were more clearly defined. Uh, you could be someone that could travel the world seeking your fortune or whatever, and you just had to kind of make your own way with it. And if you ran into bad guys that wanted to cut your head off or whatever, you just would have to fight your best. And there's something just primal about that.
Hmm.
And maybe it's because I grew up in a bit of a chaotic, scary environment. it gave me the sense of comfort to watch movies about people that were going through constantly dangerous situations and able to use their wits to get out of it. And for Cleo, I really wanted this character to act as sort of a polar opposite to Indy in a couple of ways, but the whole underdog aspect, I think, is critical to immediately making an audience latch onto a character, especially when you're working in a short film where you have only
Hmm.
so much time to express characterization and things. So thank you for acknowledging that. That was something that I took very seriously.
One thing, so the short film is 19 minutes, 44 seconds. Fantastic. Really enjoyed it. The production value is spectacular. The question I always have, like I've done just a handful of like trying to do video stuff for YouTube. And
Okay.
just doing that where it's just me, I know how much the what is on screen is only a percentage. How long was the production to make the film?
Yeah, so it was definitely a like below low budget. Like it was almost entirely out of my own pocket. There were some fundraisers that we did to raise money for it, which helped out a lot. But really, the top of our budget was around like maybe 3,000, which is
Hmm.
virtually nothing
Yeah.
compared to even the average independent film. And a lot of it was just I was able to luckily find people who shared my passion for the genre, who were willing to believe in it and wanted to support it as best they could. Um, the two male characters in the movie, played by Troy and Jared, they're good friends of mine, and they're also diehard indie fans. So
They were
they
delightful.
they intimately understood the genre. They knew the right tone to hit, and they have more experience doing filmmaking than me. And they were able to really act as mentors to help me corral the chaos and make sure that we were all able to do what we could within our very limited time schedules. And we had to deal with weather complications a lot. You're
Mhm.
filming out in the woods with natural lighting, and you're completely at the mercy of rain and stuff. It was definitely something where like there's footage out there of the minute I yell cut, everyone is immediately scrambling to get out of the rain and stuff. And it's just one of those things that you don't think about until you're actually making films, that
Hmm.
this is what really happens just on the margins outside the camera. What you
Hmm.
see is a very carefully crafted illusion. And it's something where if you're a really good magician, you can pull it off. And it means a lot to hear that I was able to do that. So, and I didn't do it alone. I had so much help from dedicated, loyal, really patient people that just were utter professionals.
Hmm. And it shows in the work. Like you told me when you sent me the link that 4K is best computer
Mm,
screen or really good TV. I have a really good TV, so I was able to throw it up there.
excellent.
And my wife and I sat there, and she's a really big theater kid. So she like
Oh,
in school acting, she's a seamstress, so costumes are a big thing for her. And so sitting down
oh,
watching, she's like, this is a really good production. It's just what I kept hearing
oh,
her say, which, considering
oh.
how picky she is a great compliment.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. Tell her that I said thank you so much. Costuming was something that it was mostly just things I could scrounge off the internet or from Etsy, just cobbled together things, which kind of fits the whole nature of the production anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad that we were able to get away with just sort of whatever we could find. I didn't have the budget to do full-blown, extravagant, like period era stuff. I just had to find whatever I could that looked somewhat close enough and
Hmm.
just prayed that people would get that they would suspend disbelief enough. So I'm thrilled to hear that someone with that kind of background could watch this and at face value go, that looks authentic. That's beautiful to hear.
Hmm. How much the part of what makes a good adventure character is like one thing I love about Indiana Jones is the silhouette. Like the instant
Mm,
someone looks at you or I, they know exactly what we're talking about. When I
mm.
was walking to the airport one day, I was like, that's a guy that has a vested leather jacket. Like I recognized the
Yes.
silhouette instantly.
Yes, I've
And
actually had that moment myself. So,
I'm like, yes. So, what informing the way Cleopatra Pryce looks? How much
mm.
thought did you put into the costume design for her and what the visual look for the character would be?
Yes, an insane amount of thought went into it because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's so important that your main hero character look distinctive And it's so damn hard to think of a look that isn't just pseudo Indiana Jones, because
Yes.
that is the standard now. And
Yes.
so I was trying to think of something that would really stand out and be unique to her. And I decided to take the opportunity to indulge in a bit of wardrobe fashion that I am really fond of, and that is capes.
I was
I
so happy. I was like,
love capes.
capes. This is like so awesome. How often do you get characters that are
Mm.
actually supposed to be the 30s wearing a cape? Because it
Yeah.
says something about the character too. And
Yes.
that's the choice that I love.
Yes. The cape is something that I felt like, if nothing else, that is going to immediately make her stand out from other adventure characters. And I wanted there to be a sense that she is still very new to her career. And so I
Mhm.
wanted her costume to also have a little bit of a cobbled together feel. But it was important to me that she also have somewhat of a sort of gender neutral look to her
Mhm.
as sort of a way to, I guess, defy the expectation that you'd have that a woman in this time period would still look super feminine.
Mhm.
And I thought it would be really interesting to instead show that this is a girl who, based on her insecurities and the environment she lives in, she's
Mhm.
trying to kind of put on an act as something different. And in a very masculine world, it
Mhm.
makes sense that a woman who's trying to kind of reach that same heights would put on more of a demeanor like that. She'd have more of a tomboy aspect to her. And I felt
Mhm.
like that would also make her stand out a little bit. Because normally, I mean, Lara Croft is like the most obvious other example of a female
Yes.
archaeologist. And she's very much, oh, this is full blown, very feminine, very,
It's very
uh,
pinup girl to a certain extent,
yes, I didn't want to
which
say it, but that's it.
but that's it. And they're definitely, it's like they can justify the character choices all they want. That's essentially the way the designers went with,
Yep,
which makes sense for the era, what they were trying to
sure,
do. You want to attract the
sure.
audience. All the reasons make sense. And also like the choice of like I think the as bad as they are, at one point I want to do a review on those movies for the podcast
Sure,
because
sure.
utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the whole like English lady and all that stuff, it does play into it. But you're right. It's very much that's what most people go with as the default. I think that again, the character choices of how Cleopatra chooses to dress, and I think that that's conveyed in the performance. I'm sorry, I don't have the actress's name in front of me, who
Her
played
name is
Cleopatra.
Janelle Cloth.
Janelle Close, she did such a great job portraying the character with the right attitude of giddy excitement and a degree of vulnerability in that I'm still learning this. And we all have imposter syndrome.
Mm, mm,
And that like comes through on the screen for her, where he's like, "You're a joke." And you
yeah.
just see the light in her eyes like kind of dim a little. She's like, I really can't do this. But
Yep.
still, again, this is what good storytelling doesn't take a lot. You just need a good conflict, good characters, and a goal. When I watched The Mirror of Amun-Ra, I thought this would be a pitch perfect short story too. And
Hmm.
that's what good stories should be. There are so many times I watched The Fountain of Youth recently.
Yeah, I heard that wasn't all that good,
It was
but
really
I want to
bad.
give it a shot at some point.
I think that you will enjoy parts of it. Like genuinely,
Okay.
there are some redeemable things, but the part that was best in the film, I was like, that's a good short story. Where it's just very straightforward. This is what our goal is. This is the antagonist. This is the conflict. Now we've
Mm,
overcome it.
sure,
And
sure.
you followed that beautifully in The Mirror of Amun-Ra.
Oh, thank you very much. I know Janelle is still very new to acting as well, and so I think a lot of that kind of bled into the performance, and I think that gave it a lot of authenticity. And I know Janelle is someone who is really passionate about what she does, and she went into this and gave it her absolute all. And despite the fact that she didn't really have as much experience as like Troy or Jared with acting, she still stepped up to the plate in a massive way. And I'm so proud of her for what she was able to accomplish in this, because everyone that has watched this movie has said, oh man, she was so innately likable and immediately
Hmm.
sympathetic, and you really root for her. And that's like, part of that is writing, but also no matter how good your writing is, if your actor isn't selling it, then you're
Yes.
sunk. And Janelle was able to accomplish that, and I'm going to be forever grateful to her for doing that. So I'm really thrilled to hear that everyone just loves her performance in this because I on set was watching her and being like, ah, oh, she's making it work. Thank God. Yes, we got this. It's going to be great. So yeah, Janelle, really proud of her.
The fight
And
choreography in this is really good too.
oh, yes, yes. So that was all Jared because Jared, in addition to being like an actual actor and a director and writer and everything, he's a stuntman and he's intimately aware of how to do these things. And he was able to bring his professionalism to the set, his knowledge. He was really patient with Janelle, who has absolutely no stunt experience at all, and was able to patiently shepherd her through the moves and make sure that they all like it takes a lot of takes to be able to make sure that you get
The
the
right shots.
perspective right,
Yes.
and like he was able to just really step forward and do what needed to be done because I knew when I hired him, not just as that character, but as stunt coordinator, that when we got to that scene, I needed to just step aside and let
hmm
the professional do his work. And everyone that's seen the movie has also complimented that fight as being short but very sweet. And
hmm
so it's something that I always knew writing this. I wanted to have at least some kind of fight scene. I knew that I couldn't get away with a lot, but I wanted at least something to kind of hit that flavor. And so I'm so glad that our tiny little fight managed to have such a big impact for people.
hmm What was the inception point for the Mirror of Amun-Ra?
So I have had the idea for Cleopatra Pryce for a number of years, and it's gone through many, many iterations, many different forms of like what her debut story would look like. There was at one point going to be a young adult novel that I was going to
hmm
try that would introduce her, but then it was around the time of COVID when I was really feeling itching to do a short film that would be an original concept because
hmm
I have done shorts before, but they were fan films.
hmm
I've done an Indiana Jones fan film, I've done some Star Wars fan films, but I wanted to make something that was an original concept that I could truly look at and say, I made this.
hmm
And so I was like, Cleopatra Price would be a really good candidate to do that because I really want to get out of my system my love of this genre and make something unique for it. And so I was trying to think of a concept that would be affordable and simple, but also have emotional weight to it. And so I came up with the entire structure of this film is sort of like a one act play,
hmm
like a very basic, straightforward, character centric thing that just has the sprinklings of like the adventure stuff.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I could at least make the audience believe in like a really basic character arc, and if I could get the vibe right,
hmm
then that would be enough. Like people are going to understand that this isn't a $300 million budget production from Paramount Pictures. This is just a couple of really passionate people in the Midwest trying to pay homage to something. And if I can get people to look at it from that lens and then exceed their expectations,
hmm
that was the goal I was trying to hit. Was I was trying to really make a statement with this as like, this is what I'm capable of with utterly nothing.
hmm
Imagine what I could do with something. And so that's something where the story was deliberately designed to be very simple and straightforward. And because I knew that was all I was going to be able to accomplish, but I wanted to still make sure that the story I told would have impact. So when you're a writer, and I know you know this because you're a writer yourself, it's something where you're constantly thinking through every single creative choice, trying to make sure, okay, is this going to land the way I want it? Is this going to be misinterpreted? Is this going to create a plot hole down the line?
Yeah.
Like, what if I want to do a sequel and then this thing ends up contradicting something I want to do later? It's such a careful balance of things. And I do intend for this to act as sort of like a proof of concept to do more stories with her. So I
Good.
also had to keep in mind that anything I do in this, it has to have room for further development. It can't be completely locked off.
hmm
But that being said, I wanted to make sure it felt self-contained. It's not ending on a cliffhanger, even though in this
hmm
case I could get away with it because
Yeah.
of the genre. but I wanted it to feel complete. I wanted people to watch this and come out of it satisfied that they had finished a story. It's
Hmm.
not something where you end it and then you're like, oh, so there's five more movies to watch. Damn it. So I was trying to also hit that careful balance of don't do everything I want to do now because I want to do
Hmm.
more later, but also make sure that you create a satisfying experience in and of itself. That's
Hmm.
important.
In Matt Bird wrote a book called The Secrets of Character. And
Mm.
in it, he makes a very profound point, which is people don't read your stuff, writing background specifically, people don't read your work for the plot. People read it, people enjoy it, people devour it for the character.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that what you've done, Cleopatra Pryce is a wonderfully written character, a wonderfully designed character, wonderfully portrayed character that honestly, I feel like you could literally take her and any type of medium or expression you could do. You could do a radio drama, you could do a short story collection, you could do a novel, you could do more films, you could do a comic book. Like I've been seeing the fan art
Yes.
you've been posting, and I'm like, honestly, Cleopatra Price would
Hmm.
be an amazing comic book.
Indeed. Yep. I'm trying to kind of deliberately treat it as something where the possibilities are very open. And I'm waiting to see just how this kind of takes off. Like if I can get the right kind of support for more stuff down the line, a lot of it is going to depend on just what people want to see.
Hmm.
And so it's something where you're right. I wanted to write a character and design her and everything so that it could fit in a variety of different forms. And comic books would be amazing. I would love to be able to do that. I don't have the art talent, so I would have to commission an artist for it.
Hmm.
So right now, my plan is that I'm going to try writing books
Hmm.
and see how that goes. I do have like an outline for a like 5 or 6 book series
Cool.
that would basically tell a complete story arc for her, like going
Hmm.
throughout her entire career.
Hmm.
That's sort of what my plan is now, but I'm open to it shifting depending on if this thing takes off in a way where people are like, oh, I'd actually love to see this instead. I'm willing to pivot.
Hmm.
So,
Honestly, again, this is where creativity is being open to possibilities, being open to the various changes. You're a filmmaker. You know how that works.
yes, yes. You have to be willing to compromise and improvise. And the original script, uh, I actually have it available for people to read on my Dropbox, which I've been like linking as sort of like a freebie for fans of the
Mhm.
movie. And that's something where if you read that, you'll see how the tone of it is still there in the final film, but there were little moments that were added that weren't in there, and a lot of those came from just serendipitous stuff on set with actors and stuff. And that's the sort of thing that I really love. I love when
Mhm.
I can create a foundation for something, but then someone else is able to bring their unique special sauce to it and elevate it. Like
Mhm.
there's a moment in the movie which I'm not going to go into too deeply because it's a little spoilery, but it's after the villain has done a pretty nasty thing to another character, and Jared came up with a line as just sort of like a really mean-spirited quip. And that was not in my original script. That was something he came up with. And the minute I heard it, I was like, that's so deliciously mean. Oh, so it's stuff like that that I mean, it's in that spirit too of like Raiders, where the famous swordsman scene where they had to kind of come up with another solution on set because Harrison had the shits. It's
Mhm.
stories like that that result in those beautiful moments. So that's one thing I love about filmmaking. And one of the other bits that I'll tell you is that the very first shot of this movie is of a skull on the ground, and you see a spider crawling over it. And that was completely on accident. We did not plan that. That was something where we were just filming, and the minute we started filming, the spider crawls across the skull, and I was like, "Oh my God, look at that!" Right, right. 3, 2, 1, walk. So that was a moment of like that happened, and in my brain, I was going, this might be a sign that this is something special. If something like that that so perfectly enhances what I was trying to do, like I love that in the indie movies you have a tradition of creepy, gross little creatures and
Hmm.
things. And I would have loved to have put something like that in this, like on a proper scale, but I kind of had told myself, there's no way you're going to get around to getting like actual animals or snakes or whatever. Like you're just going to have to just make do with what you have. And then that happens, and it's like, I just got a free creepy crawly and I didn't do anything. And it's just something like that where those are beautiful moments that when you're making a film, you're
Hmm.
so grateful for them.
Hmm. Who are your top five directors?
Spielberg, uh, James Cameron,
Hmm.
Sam Raimi, Christopher Nolan, Guillermo del Toro. Have I passed five yet?
I think that that's five.
Okay. I mean, there are others, but like those
Yeah.
are the ones that are immediately coming to my head.
Hmm. I can definitely see some of those vibes in the Mirror of Amun-Ra, which, again, that's what makes fun filmmaking. I always enjoy when I watch something that's good and I can go, clearly they had a great time making this. And
Yeah.
you shot this in the woods. Like the in the Midwest, I've seen environments like this before. But
Hmm.
your guys' storytelling, the cinematography, the filmmaking itself was so on point. Like again, huge credit to you and your team that when I'm watching it, I'm instantly like, this is good. Like I'm never certain what to expect when I see a fan film or a short film that came out. Sometimes
Right.
it doesn't matter how the good the budget is. Bad filmmaking is bad filmmaking. But
Yes.
you did such a beautiful job with just the setting, the cinematography, everything was firing on all cylinders.
Thank you. Yes, we worked really hard to make sure that it looked and sounded as professional as we could because, like you, I've seen so many things where I'm like, I check out within like the first 15 seconds just because I can immediately tell this is not up to even like a bare minimum quality standard. And I wanted to make sure that with like the opening sequence, I
Hmm.
wanted to immediately send the message that, okay, this is not just a bunch of people messing around in the woods with a camcorder.
Hmm.
This is going to feel professional. And that was why I fought so hard to put a waterfall in this movie
Okay,
as just an extra bit of production value.
I have to ask about that because it is such a immediate, like they talk about in writing you want the first so many pages to really be that hook. In
Yeah.
a film, like let's use Indiana Jones as the example here. In
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, they do such a great job of immediately setting up in the first like little scene where there's that moment of tension, the whip comes out, and then
Yeah.
he like steps out from the shadows, and it's like, oh, I am him, I am here.
Hmm.
You did such a great job with that waterfall sequence is just a great establishing start for, oh, I'm in for something really good here.
Thank you. Yes, the waterfall was something that I fought so hard for. And we had to take a trip all the way up to the North Shore of Minnesota to film that.
Oh, wow.
And that was a huge trip, like multiple hour drive. And then we had to take like a whole extra hour just to walk to the location through extremely muddy trails. By the
Hmm.
time we got there, we were all wet and sweating and exhausted. And the waterfall, thankfully, was very vibrant because it had rained the night before. But it was something where we weren't able to get to the exact spot that I had originally like scouted out,
Hmm.
which I had thought would make for a really good angle. So when we got there, we realized, oh, I'm not going to be able to get to that area because the water's too high. So we're going to have to just make do with the angle we have. And thank goodness my cinematographer and cameraman, Marcus, like was able to kind of figure out the exact right position to get, considering that we really didn't have a lot of room in that tiny corner. Like
Hmm.
if you were there shooting on the day, you would have seen that right outside the corner frame, there were like 20 like park visitors just hanging out on the side, watching the waterfall, taking selfies and things. Well, we were there filming our little movie, and the rest of them are just like, I don't know what these freaks are doing, but all right. And we had to just try our best to sneak our shots in whenever there weren't people in frame. and just find like a tiny little corner that wouldn't be literally going into the river, but it would be far enough back that you could get that perspective. So that day was incredibly difficult. And I'm so glad that it paid off with a shot that, like you said, it shows people that, okay, this is not your typical backyard bonanza. Like
Hmm.
I tried to do something that would show this is this is bigger than that. So I
Hmm.
fought so hard for that, and I'm so glad it paid off.
So that was something in the script right from the start was you knew you
Yes.
wanted the waterfall.
Yep. And I didn't know like how like big it would be when we actually filmed it. I did a number of scouting trips to different waterfalls around the Twin Cities area. Nothing really looked good enough. And so I decided, okay, the only way I'm going to really find something that looks properly grand and
Mhm.
mystical is to go all the way up to the North Shore where they have those really big ones. And the one that you see in the movie is the largest waterfall in the state.
That
So I
is,
wanted sometimes bigger can be better. So
at least with waterfalls.
yes,
Tell me about
I've always loved waterfalls. I've always found them very magical and enchanting things.
I remember when Scott Hebert and I did our episode on Crystal Skull. The
Mhm.
comment, he made a comment about when you see them all just kind of sitting there as the water's filling that basin. Just
Yeah.
there is something about watching moving water that is just fascinating to us as humans. I don't know what
Mhm.
it is, but waterfalls, just the sight of rushing water. Maybe it's like a sense of like self-preservation that we have. Don't go in, but
Yeah.
just we're entranced by it, like a bull is
Yes.
entranced by like a red handkerchief or something. It just draws the
Yes.
attention, holds us.
And I've always had a fear of drowning, and that has also resulted in anything involving water and like dangerous underwater environments, like that sort of thing always adds like an extra bit of tension for me. And
Hmm.
so obviously we don't have any of the characters going into like a lake or anything, but I love whenever you can get a movie that just adds a sense of like rapids or rivers or something because it just for me it's like a primal example of this is
Hmm.
something that gives life and can take it away.
Yes.
And waterfalls, for whatever reason, ever since I was a kid, I've just found them transfixing. And so I was like, this is a movie where I'm just hitting off all my little personal quirks that I love. I've got a cape, I've got a waterfall. It's based on Indiana Jones. There's even little bits of like little homages to like James Cameron cinematography and things. If you really pay attention, you'll see them. So it's just stuff where I just decided this is going to be my chance to just have fun with all my little idiosyncrasies and hope that it makes a good story.
Well, that's what makes good storytelling. And that's what I think I love about the adventure genre is that the adventure genre is very the pulp adventure genre is a wonderful blank canvas that you can, as a creator, put your individual stamp on. And I think that's what's disappointing with a lot of the what I'll call Indiana clones is I realized this when I was like writing after publishing One Man's Treasure. I was like, oh, what are like other adventure books that are Indiana Jones-esque? But
I'd say
someone's
like
unique
the
thing.
Dirt Pit series is what I would go
Yeah,
to.
yeah. But like most people a lot of dudes that decide to self-publish a book will write an adventure story, but it'll be so blandly generic.
Yeah, yeah,
And that lack of soul, that lack of individuality is apparent. It's some dude that looks like Indiana Jones, but like has one unique different feature. And
yep,
then he's chasing an artifact, and then that's it. Whereas I
yep,
think what you've done is you have put your individual stamp on Cleopatra Pryce as a unique character. The story is really good. It includes your idiosyncrasies, and that's what makes it a compelling story. I have to ask, the Mirror of Amun-Ra. I think that in treasure fiction, having
mm.
the artifact is either I'm just picking a random thing, or it's I carefully chose a specific type of item because it informed story or something I was interested in. For you, what was the decision for the Mirror of Amun-Ra?
So I've always loved ancient Egypt. I've been fascinated by that my entire life, and that, of course, was inspired by stuff like Indiana Jones and the Mummy. And so I originally, in the very earliest versions of this story, it was going to be it was going to actually be connected to Robin Hood instead. It was going to be
Ooh.
connecting on that sort of lore. It would still have a magic mirror that has
Uh-huh.
souls imprisoned inside it, but it was going to instead have belonged to the evil prince from Robin Hood.
I
And
love this
so,
concept. FYI, like, wow, why have people not used Robin Hood more in adventure fiction?
yes, thank you. Yes, I know what you mean. It's so, I know it's been done a million times, but it'll never not be relevant. Come on, people.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
I know this is like tangent, but Robin Hood
sure.
fiction tends to, like the most recent Robin Hood movies, they tend to just be generic and hit, oh, you'll know
Yeah,
the Robin Hood plot beats. Whereas
right.
I think taking the Robin Hood lore and drawing it out into other stories is a
Yeah, yeah.
fascinating concept.
Yes, yes. There's so much you can do there. And that was the original concept that I had. But then as I was rewriting it and rewriting it, I had this realization that, you know what? I have an opportunity here to explore my love of ancient Egyptian mythology. How
Hmm.
about I pivot to instead make this an Egyptian artifact? And by doing that, it also gave me the opportunity to have it sort of connect with the larger legacy of pulp adventure fiction and things,
Hmm.
which was inspired in great part by the Egypt mania craze in the
Yes.
1920s when King Tut was discovered. So it
Hmm.
all ended up actually working as a really beautiful way to just enhance the spirit of it. When
Hmm.
maybe if I had gone with like the Robin Hood mythology angle, maybe it wouldn't quite have that Indiana Jones flavor as
Yeah.
much. So I
Hmm.
think it worked out really well for the better. And with that artifact, I wanted the entire thing is built around Cleo's arc is that she is young, she's insecure about her place in the world, she wants to kind of prove her worth as an adventurer, and she thinks the only way she can do that is by making some sort of grandiose discovery that'll make her rich and famous.
Hmm.
And this artifact was designed as a way to kind of challenge that by saying, okay, you find this incredible, mystical, unique thing that would make you famous if you brought this back,
Hmm.
but the catch is that it's a relic of oppression, of injustice. It represents cruelty. It represents the abuse of power. There are literal human beings trapped inside this
Hmm.
who you have the power and the responsibility to help them. Are you going to do that? And
Hmm.
I pulled from Temple of Doom for that. The whole
Yes.
idea of you have to choose fortune and glory or the good of the people. And so
Hmm.
that was something where that was my emotional crux of the movie. And the mirror was something where what I thought would really make it hit hard is if I was to make sure that the voices, that their dialogue was in as close to authentic Egyptian as I could get.
Okay, I was
And I
genuinely
was
curious about that because I saw in watching the credits, I'm like, these look like the names of people that actually could speak Egyptian.
so yes, that was a very complicated thing that I fought like nuts to get right. I found a bunch of actual Egyptian voice actors. I paid them to do the lines, and those lines are also translated from my English sort of dialogue in the script into a really close approximation of ancient Egyptian done for me by an Egyptologist that I reached out to.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I fought so hard to add that extra bit of authenticity because I felt like that not only is it just important to just respect those cultures nowadays
Hmm.
and make sure you're more authentic, but also it would really sell that, okay, this feels real. These
Hmm.
are actual spirits from ancient past who've been trapped in this thing for God knows how long.
Hmm.
And their only way of getting to the afterlife is if someone has the compassion to help them. And I felt like that's something that I'm so proud that I was able to really fight for that and pull it off. Most other people would have just given up and just been like,
Hmm.
I'll just make up gobbledygook
Yes.
and cast random people. But I
Yes.
was like, this is an opportunity to really
Hmm.
do something with authenticity. And I felt like that added so much to it. So that's something that I feel like is one of the most successful things in that movie is being able to pull that off. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm just very proud that I was able to pull that off.
I mean, it adds so much. Like again, it's the little habits make biggest action consequences usually. In a film, sometimes it's those little things that can that it's not huge. It's a subtle thing that adds more than people realize to the authenticity of the film or the feature or whatever kind of production. The other thing I want to shout out with this is the special effects were
Hmm.
phenomenal in this film. Like
Hmm.
again, I watch and I'm like, this is this is a short film. The cinematography, the everything about this production is so much better than I had any expectation of, and the special effects were with that.
Thank you very much. Shane is going to be delighted to hear that because he was the visual effects guy on this movie, and we worked so hard to just meticulously finesse each shot and make sure that it could hit the right look and feel. And he was such a trooper because I could get very anal about it, but he did an incredible job with it, and it's something where I knew that I was never going to be able to pull off super elaborate visual effects. So what my goal was if we can just do something that approximates the
Hmm.
idea and hope that the audience is able to sort of suspend disbelief for the rest of it, that would
Hmm.
be good enough. But we were able to go beyond that and make something that like looks legitimately like within camera.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I'm also so happy we were able to pull off. And when I shouldn't talk about this because it's a spoiler, but there's a little bit with the mirror that involves
Hmm.
some actual in-camera flames
Hmm.
and on-set lighting, which adds to the effect as well. As much as you can do practically is going to so help when you're in post-production, adding all those other things on. And this was also another thing that I want to really tout about the movie is that I fought so hard to make this feel like something that actually could have been shot in the 1980s.
Hmm.
Like in my brain, I think of this as like a lost film made after Raiders came out
Hmm.
and some other studio was like, quick, we got to capitalize on this. Let's make something. And so they were able to make something back in like 1983 or 4 or
Hmm.
something like that. And I wanted it to look and feel like it could have been attainable with the technology of the time.
Hmm.
And that was a philosophy that ran through the entire production. There's not a single green screen in this movie.
Hmm.
It's all authentic in camera. The visual effects are deliberately designed to look like they could have easily been like rotoscoped by ILM back in the day.
Hmm.
It's all that stuff. It's all meant to feel as authentic a vintage experience as I could get.
Hmm. It has the real flavor and vibe of a serial in the good way. Like even down to the runtime is this feels like it is an episode of the Cleopatra Pryce serial. And
Yep.
again, hats off to you because that's good storytelling. That's knowing how to do it, and it's good. Like it's enjoyable. We watched the Zorro serial for the podcast. We were doing the Indiana Jones lead up.
Yeah, I
It
know. I
hurt.
know.
It was bad, but what impressed me about that, and like the reason it's memorable is because the action in it was
Yes.
so pushing the envelope. They had Yakuma Kanut as like the stunt guy. Like, yeah, the dude that literally transforms stunts was your stunt man and stunt coordinator.
Yep.
Of course, you got some good stuff back then, but that's like it. Yours actually tells a good story while following in that tradition of a good pulp adventure serial.
It's funny that you say that because literally last night I was watching Zorro Rides again.
Oh,
And it's something where I'm gonna say I know it's cringy, it's so like hackneyed and corny, but I was still having so much fun watching it because the entire time I'm watching it, I'm just thinking, I'm imagining a little itty bitty baby George Lucas and Steven Spielberg watching this and just being like, and there's just something very charming about it. And I love being able to watch old stuff like that and just
hmm,
see the the precedent that was set for things
hmm.
that came on later. I find that kind of thing really just enjoyable, even if I know it's shoddy.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's some really impressive stunt stuff going on in there too. There are multiple moments where I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that looked like it really freaking hurt." They probably didn't get like compensation for that, but yeah.
There is a scene that I literally recorded it as we were watching it that I loved most, where it's like he jumps off a horse, ro rolls and rolls up with his gun drawn. I'm
Yeah,
like, that's
yeah.
amazing. And it's the moments like that that
I
people
could
need to
never do
watch old
that.
serials for.
Yes, right. The other moment that I just blew my mind was when you see him. on the horse next to the train, and he has to then like vault off the horse onto the train. And you look at it, and it's so easy to take this kind of stuff at face value now and just be like,
Hmm.
oh, it's just a guy jumping on a train, big whoop.
Yeah.
Back then, that was insanity.
Yes.
Like, and
No wires.
you just watch that and you just think about how that was a real person that did that. That was done in an environment and a time period where safety on set wasn't quite up to what it is now. It could have gone wrong in 10 billion ways. He could have like grabbed it at the wrong angle and had his arm ripped out of his socket. You never know. But these guys did this stuff, and even if they got like maybe like $5 for it at the end of the day, like it's something where it did have a meaningful impact on two little kids named
Hmm.
Stephen and George. And that's kind of a beautiful example of what I was talking about earlier about how even like bad art or poorly made art can actually have this domino effect, this ripple
Hmm.
effect throughout time and inspire the next generation to then take that and elevate it to new heights. So that's something that I think about a lot.
I'm trying to remember which, I think it was either J. Michael Straczynski's book or it was William Goldman's book. I can't remember which one, but basically one of their earlier, like they were, no, it was Stephen Pressfield, I think. You know,
Okay.
it was a writer that did other stuff and then started doing screenplays.
Sure, sure.
He, like the writing partner he worked with at first was like, here are old pulp books. Read these because it's not necessarily that the work itself is this transcendent thing, but the ideas and concepts you're going to find in them can be pulled. Like this is, I think, the thing. Distilling old bad art sometimes still has incredible concepts
Yeah.
that we just make more sophisticated. Example,
Hmm.
I know there are lots of fans of the original Mission Impossible series, like
Oh,
the
sure,
show,
sure.
but taking that concept of a team pulling off a heist for good guys.
Yep.
Tom Cruise has ridden that beast into a huge franchise that went from like being the 60s show with all
Yeah.
of the drawbacks and slowness and oldness of it to
Yep.
a thrilling action series.
Yes, yes, you're completely right. And I am a fan of the Mission Impossible movies as well. And I really admire how they've been able to kind of keep the spirit of authentic stunt work alive
Hmm.
in an era where things are becoming increasingly CGI. And like
Hmm.
Final Reckoning is a movie that has a lot of faults, but there are two sequences in that are so nail-bitingly
Hmm.
spectacular that like the final one in particular, that biplane chase,
Oh yeah.
I kid you not, that is an idea I've always had in my head is like, I would love to see Indiana Jones do something like this.
Yes.
And they finally gave it to me in a roundabout way. And the fact that Tom Cruise is even sort of dressed like Indy a little
I
bit,
know.
I
He's like
was
half
like,
Uncharted, half Indiana
yeah,
Jones, and you're like,
it's
Tom
like
Cruise
this
is
is
like,
made for me.
what is the algorithm saying is the correct way to dress for this?
It's the entity, man. But yeah, so it's yeah, I really enjoyed the Mission Impossible movies, and I wish that there was more like authentic stunt stuff happening now. And because my friendship with Jared has allowed me to kind of really look at stunt work in a different light, because now I see the work that goes into it. I can
Hmm.
see the way that he is able to spot when something doesn't look realistic or
Yeah.
convincing. Now, whenever I watch action movies, it's so much easier for me to see the ways where filmmakers cheated and where
Hmm.
they like slacked off. So that's something that's sort of been like an unintended consequence that it's like, oh no, movies that I used to really love, now I watch them and I'm like, oh, they should have maybe reshot that bit. But with stunts and stuff like that, I really love how the Indiana Jones movies were able to really capture that old pulp
Hmm.
concept of we're just gonna shoot for the moon and do the most insane shit you've ever seen. And it's people will call it lowbrow entertainment, but we're still going to try our best to make it look really cool. And Indiana Jones was lucky enough to have people like Spielberg and Lucas who were like top of their craft talent who were able to elevate everything else. So it
Hmm.
could have easily been just like those old pulps where like the story and characters are kind of naff, but the action is great. They were like, no, let's treat all of this as like A caliber. Let's try and elevate all of it as much as we possibly can. And that
Hmm.
was what made Raiders such a special bolt of lightning. and it's so difficult to capture that again. And with Mirror of Amun-Ra, I wanted to make sure that even though I knew I could never, I am not Spielberg, I never will be Spielberg, but I wanted to still honor the basic mood and feel that he was able to create in those movies. And in
Mhm.
my brain, I think of that as continuing the legacy of the Pulps, inspiring new filmmakers to create things that are tributes to things that they grew up loving. And hopefully that can continue with whoever comes after me. So
What's next for you? You said you've got kind of a six book idea for Cleopatra
that's
Pryce. Do you have anything in the works now? What's next for Cleo?
Well, at the moment, that is the main plan is to just try doing books because it's also just cheaper for me.
Mhm.
Um, Otherwise, my filmmaking career is sort of on hold at the moment because I'm trying to figure out some other personal life changes and I'm hoping to move in the next year or so as well. And that's all going to be a very
Big
financially
life
difficult
changes.
thing.
Yes.
And so right now, I don't have any like films like officially in the works. I have many concepts I'd love to do, but
Hmm.
it's going to have to wait a little bit.
Hmm.
And so right now, I'm just trying to see if I can promote Mirror as much as I can and get the right eyes on it and get it the audience that it needs, then that will inspire me to continue working on the books.
Hmm.
And that is at least something that can keep me creatively stimulated while I'm dealing with all this other stuff.
Hmm.
So at the moment, that's my plan, but I'm also working on a Blu-ray release for the Mirror.
Ooh.
I'm hoping that I can get a local studio that produces physical media
Hmm.
to do like a limited run that I can then have like diehard fans of the movie buy, and it's
Yes.
going to include some special features that I'm building. It's going to have an
Let's bring
audio
back physical
commentary
media.
track. Yes, yes, exactly. I am a diehard believer in the importance of physical media, and I always knew yes, this movie is going to debut on YouTube, but I want it to survive on a disc. I want it to
Hmm.
feel like it's an authentic movie in that way. So I'm working on a Blu-ray release as well.
Awesome. Well, I will link everything in the show notes, other than obviously seeing The Mirror of Amun-Ra, which is a fantastic film, linking to your YouTube. Where else can people follow you?
So I have a Instagram for my cosplays, which is called The Fan in the Hat.
Nice.
And that's something that I try to update regularly with the various pictures I've taken over the years. And that's something where that's probably the easiest way to reach me because that's the account that I use the most on Instagram. But on Instagram, there is also an account for the Mirror of Amun-Ra where I post updates on that production and behind the scenes things, fan art, all that. And you'll be able to see updates on the Blu-ray release that way as well.
Hmm.
I also have uh, a Facebook page for the movie, which again, just called Mirror of Amun-Ra. You can follow that as well. Otherwise, I'm still trying to kind of build a social media presence, and
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out a way that I can find the balance between not being on it too much, but
Yes.
also being able to promote my things. So it's something that I'm still figuring out, but those are like the really important things I would say immediately go look at and try to follow if you can. So
And I will link all of that in the show notes. Jonathan, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show.
I feel so honored to be on here. I've been following you guys for a little bit, and I've been really inspired by how you're keeping the pulp adventure spirit alive, and you're helping to keep vintage storytelling alive as well. I love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. I'd love to come back at some point.
Absolutely. I think we have a lot that we can talk about.
100%. Yep, yep. But thank you for having me, sincerely.
Absolutely. Until next time, Jonathan.
See you later.